Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Whose picture you holding up there?
You will never guess who this person is.
You are correct, sir. I'm not sure. I don't know who that is. You're right.
Uh, it's somebody who has the name of a regular mixer of cocktails.
The name of a regular mixer of is her name Bartender?
No, her name is.
No rush, no rush. People aren't her name is Ann Seltzer.
Her name is Ann Seltzer. She is a pollster. She was the pollster at in Iowa, the regular pollster in Iowa, and she is the voice of God among pollsters. She's everybody respects her. She almost always gets it right. She's gone out on a limb in a couple of times when she
Mm-hmm.
said Obama was going to win the Iowa primary big. Nobody believed her. He won the Iowa primary big. When she said Trump was way ahead in Iowa, nobody believed her. She was right. So, and just when things are drifting toward the Republicans slowly and insecurely, she comes out with a poll saying the Democrats are 4 points ahead in the generic ballot, and it really bothers people on the
Like you,
Republicans,
for example.
like me and Ryan Drudusky and people who uh, want the Republicans to win the midterms, uh, because they
Wait, well,
respect her.
I'm just curious. Why did you pick that name out of the air? Who is Ryan Jardesky, and why does
Ryan
he?
Drudusky is a young guy who's knows a lot about politics and polling. I
Mm-hmm.
follow him on Twitter. He started the 1776 project, which is he realized that with a not gargantuan effort, he could overturn school boards all over woke school boards all over the country, which he's
Okay.
doing with great
Okay, you've said
success.
enough. You've said enough. Whatever.
Uh,
It just seems strange. Go ahead. Go ahead. Proceed.
Uh,
Ann Seltzer.
anyway, he was troubled. Okay, he's constantly
Well,
posting
I'm sure
things,
millions of people were troubled. I was just wondering why
but
him, and it doesn't
it's
matter. Go ahead.
because
Ann Seltzer.
it was a statement against interest. He would normally be posting pro Republican things, and he goes, "Whoa, Ann Seltzer. Well, we have to rethink this."
Oh, I see.
Uh,
I see.
so
Okay.
uh, so basically, that is sort of the mixed picture in the election is abortion is fading. There's the Biden sort of run out of things, new initiatives. He's been reduced to Social Security this early in the campaign. That's always the final closing argument of Democrats is Republicans are going to take your Social Security. He's resorted to it 6 weeks before the election, so it seems to be things seem to be reasserting themselves in a pro-Republican direction. But who knows? There's troubling warning signs. The there is a Anyway, you probably don't want to talk about the election to start with.
Well, I mean, I'm I'm interested. That's good news. I'm happy. You're saying this is serious good news, right? For people like me. This is
It's serious good news
credible
for
person. Because you're right. I
well,
had been hearing that the air was slowly starting to go out of the Democrats' balloon.
there are a couple of things. One is she apparently in a clerical error or something, she missed the first day of polling. So this number only applies from the second day on, and it reduces the number of people she polled. So it's a relatively low number. Uh, and
But she missed it in the sense of not starting to ask people questions, or in the
I think
sense of what?
she forgot to ask him the first question, which is, "Are
Oh,
you
yeah,
voting for the
she sounds
Democrat or the
super
Republican?"
reliable. I think we should put a lot of stock in what she says. She
Well,
forgot to set her alarm
uh,
and
yeah,
missed half of the poll she was
I am.
taking.
Correct. I don't know if it's half. I think it was a multi-day poll, but
Oh, in that case,
and Nate Cohen of the New York Times ragged her for this. The
rightly.
the Sean Trend, who is the other voice of God.
These guys have
Uh,
great names. I mean, I
uh,
gotta say his is a little more apt than Seltzer, but
um, the uh, Sean Trend, if that really is your name, points out that there are no swing states anymore, so you shouldn't expect a big swing in either direction. No swing districts anymore.
Mhm.
So the Republicans are not going to get 60 seats the way they used to be able to when there were a lot of swing districts and they'd all tilt one way or the other. Uh, so that sort of he thinks that sort of makes it very very likely that the Republicans will take the House, but he hedges his bets a bit. Uh, there there's some good news for the Republicans in the Senate. Fetterman is fading quite quickly. He's down to 2 points in a recent poll, 2 point lead over Oz. Hard as that is to
And
believe.
why do you think that is? Has
Uh,
he been making public appearances and sounding like he doesn't have
I
his
think he hasn't
faculties?
he hasn't been making public appearances,
Uh-huh.
and Oz has been actually hitting him on issues as opposed to like crime. And Pennsylvania is not that democratic a state, so
Mhm.
those three things. Uh, and so
Well, probably
he's.
one effect of all this is probably to lower the expectations for Fetterman for the debate, we hope, and then he can come in
I
and
think that's
surprise
right.
us by being
Right.
at 94% of his regular
Right.
self.
Yes, that could happen.
So,
It looks like the Republicans are not doing that well in Georgia.
oh,
They are doing
good.
very well in Nevada. So, and they're not doing well in Arizona. So it's going to, I think, uh, uh,
Well, if the
it's
Democrats hold Arizona and if they win in Arizona and Georgia, they hold the Senate?
I don't think so
No? They have to win
because
either Pennsylvania or Nevada? That doesn't seem fair.
no, they're going to win if they win Nevada, Ohio with JD Vance, Wisconsin, and North Carolina in overlook race. It's very close. Then if they win one more, either Pennsylvania or Georgia, they control the Senate.
Wait, who's they?
Uh,
Republicans?
Republicans, yes. The other,
I meant to ask about Democrats, but I may have said the wrong word.
unless,
It's
oh,
there
so yeah, you're right. Sorry, I'm thinking. No, I
yes, well,
interpreted it in
Republicans
my
are to
way.
you
So
what Democrats are to
yeah,
me, so it's
great,
easy to get
great.
mixed up.
The unless there is the dark horse that I am pushing, which is Utah, which it seems to me could flip to the Democratic side. It actually the candidate is the
Mhm.
independent Evan McMullen, uh, former third party presidential candidate, who apparently is backed
Ah,
by
yes.
all the prominent anti-Trump, ex Republicans like
Mhm.
Mike Murphy and Bill Kristol,
Mm,
uh,
good.
and there's this rule called the incumbent rule. Are you aware of the incumbent rule?
No.
The incumbent rule says that if the last poll before the election, if it shows the incumbent at 40% or 42% or 55%, that's all the incumbent's going to get. All the undecided vote traditionally goes to the
Okay.
challenger.
Mhm.
So if you're at 49% and you're the incumbent, you're going to lose because the other guy's going to get 51%. Uh, that's what the rule says. It doesn't always work, but it mostly works. Uh, Mike Lee is polling at 40%. Okay, for an incumbent, that's just terrible.
He's
Okay,
toast. He's
and
toast.
you
I'm
would think
calling this one, Mickey. I'm calling this
you
one. I'm
you would
invoking
think
the incumbent rule. Mike
you
Lee
would
is toast.
think you would think he'd be toast. And I think we talked about this before. He did something to piss off the Mormon Church, so the actual church structure is against him for some reason. Mitt
Did
Romney
no one
didn't.
explain to him the first rule of running for office in Utah?
Well, you
Is
hear
he
it different ways.
this is in yeah.
He is a Mormon. He's the son of the former president of Brigham Young. His Mormon credentials are good, but he's pissed off the church hierarchy. So he may have more purchase with the actual Mormon voters than with the church, but you still don't
Mhm.
want to piss off the church because they have levers they could pull, and like Mitt Romney hasn't endorsed him. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a big deal. If Mitt Romney endorsed him, he'd win. Anyway,
So it's looking like Warnock in Georgia at the moment. That's good news. I just don't think I can stand Herschel Walker in political life. I'm sorry. I have,
well
and
they
I
have
rooted for him. I rooted for him when he
they
was with
have
the Cowboys.
they have two uh they have two debates, I think. or maybe it's one debate. And the debates are still to come, so presumably
Hmm.
Warnock will increase after the debates. What I wonder is, the Bradley effect, which is people lie to pollsters and say they're going to vote for Tom Bradley when really they're not because they were
Yeah.
racist. That was
Yeah.
in California. Uh, I think people are lying to pollsters and saying they're going to vote for Fetterman, even though in the voting booth they're going to say, "Wait, this guy's had a stroke; he can't do the job," and they're going
Huh.
to vote for the other guy. And the same with Walker. They're going to say, "I'm voting for Walker," in the voting booth they're going to say, "Wait, this guy's not
No, no,
smart."
you mean Warnock, right? Or
No, I think Walker
oh,
because
you
it's
think
like
Walker?
they don't
Oh,
want
so
to
in both
admit.
cases, they don't want to admit that they have doubts about the mental faculties.
Yes, correct.
Hmm.
Correct. And that would produce a Bradley effect that would favor Oz and Warnock. Uh,
Um.
that's my
Okay.
argument. That's my
Okay. Well, those
um
would cancel each other out. Uh.
uh
We'll
they don't.
see.
They don't because in my scenario if either one of them turns Republican, the Republicans win.
Is that right? Wait, you're saying the Democrats have to hold both Georgia and Pennsylvania to hang on in the Senate?
That's
That
assuming they win Nevada and
I think
North
we said this
Carolina.
last week, and it
Yeah.
scared me then too.
That assumes they win Nevada and North Carolina, which I think they're going to do.
Republicans win Nevada.
Republicans. Yeah. North Carolina
Well,
looks closer than Nevada at this point.
anyway,
Anyway, it's
look, there will
it
probably yeah. Go ahead.
no, it there I just think that Biden is showing sort of signs of desperation. We have the crime issue is obviously hurting him. We have EJD on writing how the Democrats can turn crime to their advantage, and it's wildly unconvincing. They should say,
How does he want to do it?
well,
Just
first
actually rob people? That would do it. If you
no,
just take
no,
their money, you will have benefited from crime.
there's uh there is a money point I want to make later, but it's first you say yes, we want the police, we think the police could help, we're not for defunding the police, and then you say Democrats are doing nothing about crime because they're not dealing with
You
the root causes of crime.
you
They're
mean
not.
you say Republicans are doing nothing
The
about crime?
Republicans are doing nothing about crime. The Democrats would say Republicans are doing nothing about crime because they're defunding mental health services and they're not solving
Right.
poverty. And
Yeah.
so and that's just insane. I mean, if you're
That'll
being
that'll work with people who are already going to vote Democratic. That'll work well.
right, and it first it's crazy to say Republicans are doing nothing about crime. Their whole point is getting tough on crime deters crime. So that that's doing something about crime. And the
Yeah, but
second
he
way,
wants to say Democrats are doing that kind of, right? I mean, he wants to say we're behind the police and all that.
right, although the way they phrase it is, the police can be useful in their role. I mean, it's never very it's never very gung ho. And the other thing is when you're being mugged, you don't think about root causes. I'm sorry. It's
I do.
like,
Speak for yourself. Every time I've gotten mugged, I've asked the person, do you feel anxiety now? Did I say something that triggers you?" That's what I say.
well, you're Mr. Cognitive Empathy, but
Mhm. I sure am.
uh anyway.
Made a big
Um
announcement in my newsletter this week, but I suppose we can talk about that in the Parrot.
it was big, although it had a familiar ring.
You mean because I claimed I was gonna write a book once before and didn't?
Correct.
In my newsletter, yes, but this time I've signed a book contract.
All
I've
right.
cashed the check.
Okay.
I'm
No wonder you're
on
looking
the hook.
no wonder you're looking flush.
I'll tell you, money does something to a man. By the way, you got a haircut. That's great. Bye bye Brillo pads. That's a good look. This is a
No,
good look.
well, I think
Now also your beard. Did you do a toning down of the beard?
the barber took care of the beard. She knows
I
what
was
she's
going to
doing.
suggest that last
Yeah.
week. You need that kind of 9-day growth look, and you had gotten up to 2 weeks, and it was starting to look a little like something an old person would have, which of course
I
neither of us
I
would have.
I was starting to look like Gandalf.
That hadn't occurred to me. I was thinking of Mitch
Although
Miller's play.
Gandalf is a revered figure, so I mean, I'm not impugning Gandalf. Um, so the money point is, I might as well sneak this in. Uh,
You
it
mean
turned
before
out
we turn to the fact that long before this election, the world will have been immolated in a
correct,
nuclear war? Okay,
correct.
good.
This
Now's
is
the
a point.
time.
Only we will only care about this point now. It turned out that during the Queen Elizabeth funeral, Democratic fundraising declined because they're heavily dependent on cable news, and the cable news was covering the Queen. So that's why they're so upset about CNN turning toward the center, because they're
Mm.
not going to be able to raise cash from CNN if CNN is no longer a reliable liberal outlet the way MSNBC is. It hits them in their pocketbook directly.
Is
It's
this
not
already
just
visibly happening?
that CNN is turning toward the center.
Yeah. I mean, I know
Well,
that's the plan.
they
They
fired
fired the
Jeffrey
yeah,
Toobin, they fired Don Lemon, they
they
fired
fired the
Brian
media guy.
Seltzer, the
R
media guy.
right.
Although the guy they replaced him with, I'm sure, is still a liberal.
Who is the
There's
guy
still
they replaced him with? Somebody I know?
Darcy somebody, and I forget if Darcy is his first name or his last name.
No, I didn't realize there
But
still
he's
were Darcys, actually.
the anyway the uh there's still people sort of spouting incredibly liberal, crazy takes on CNN all the time. So the ship hasn't turned around, but that's what panics the Dems is less money.
Hmm.
It has a crude Marxist explanation. Anyway,
Huh.
so
Also worse messaging from their point of view, though. CNN is
right, but
no longer their mouthpiece. Not that it was, I wouldn't say that, but it was.
right, no, that's true, but I hadn't realized that the cash angle goes hand in hand with the messaging
Mm.
angle. Anyway, let's turn to the end of the world.
So, yeah. So, last week I said when, Putin did the mobilization thing, he'd crossed the Rubicon. If there was anything wrong with saying that, it was that it was premature by a week because although we envisioned his annexation of these 4 provinces, he hadn't actually done it. There was some chance he would hold back on that, use it as a bargaining chip. Now he's done it. Now he has truly crossed the Rubicon.
What does crossing the Rubicon mean in this context?
Well, he's defined these 4 oblasts in Ukraine as Russian territory, and he doesn't even control nearly all of them yet. And that means that I don't think it's much of an exaggeration to say he is staking his regime not only to holding the line in Ukraine militarily, but significantly expanding the amount of
Well,
territory
what?
Ukraine controls.
That's better than staking the line on taking Kiev and taking all of Ukraine and not and removing the
Well,
government, which looked
better
like
than
his previous goal. So he's reduced his goals to the Donbass, and as
well, no,
I think,
no. This isn't just the Donbass. A and B, he left Kyiv a long time ago. As of a month ago, there were hopes that he would settle for much less than these 4 provinces. I mean, the hopes on the Ukrainian side were that they would roll the Russian presence back, and that Putin could live with that. Uh, but but now, I mean, again, he is committed to fight for a lot more territory. At the moment, he's not in position to do that. As I said last week, once the mobilization cranks up, you never know. I think it could well be that by this spring, if not sooner, Russia's in the march in Ukraine. They have, in
there,
principle, a massive manpower advantage if
there's
they
a
can mobilize enough people and he doesn't encounter crippling political blowback
there,
in the process.
there was a Russian expert at Brookings who said this actually increases the chance. She had previously first thought that it decreased the chance of nuclear war because now Putin has an achievable goal that he doesn't have to use nuclear weapons to tactical nukes to achieve. Uh, but then she said, "No, wait. This mobilization opens up a window where Ukraine can attack before the mobilization takes full effect, before those people arrive on the battlefield, and attack in the south. And if the Russian troops in the south are as demoralized as the prestigious Institute for the Study of War, is that it? Uh, uh, proclaims, they may have success. So if the Russian troops in the south start collapsing the way the troops around Kharkiv collapsed, then he might be tempted to use nukes."
Yeah, no, I was saying last week I quoted a different woman at a different not at a think tank at a university who pointed out that if the mobilization could shore up Putin's battle lines, that would decrease the chances of nuclear war, which is basically what you're saying. Could he look as we speak? I mean, I didn't check Twitter right before we signed on, but this significant town of Lyman is in the process of falling into Ukrainian hands. The part of the upshot of the big Russian retreat in the Kharkiv area was to seriously compromise Russian logistics in the Donbass broadly. For the Ukrainians to take Liman would make those kinds of Russian problems even worse. So, you know,
Wait, is Lehman in the Donbass? I'm an idiot.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's I believe it's in Donetsk. The and Anatol Lieven said in the Guardian this week and also on my podcast that he thinks if there is a significant military setback, by which he means something I think on the order of the Kharkiv thing, not just losing Lehman, but say for example, if Kherson to the west of the Dnieper River fell, I'm guessing he didn't use that example. He would think then there's a real chance of a palace coup. He envisioned a pretty smooth transition where they guarantee Putin, his wealth and his personal security, and he waltzes off Boris Yeltsin style. But Putin is not going to like that scenario. So yeah, it's at that point, if he thinks there's a real threat of a palace coup, that you can imagine him starting to think about a tactical nuclear weapon, maybe for demonstration purposes, maybe for something else. Now, I should say, right now, I don't see signs of a Russian military collapse on that scale. Ukrainians have not made much progress in Kherson, so far as we can tell. Now, collapse could happen at any moment.
But
Sometimes it works that way, but
I don't understand if he's losing and losing would cause a palace coup, and he uses tactical nukes. Won't that just move up the date of the palace coup? They'll say we have to stop this madman now before he gets us in a nuclear war. Uh,
well, the cause of the palace coup wouldn't be the fear that he's crazy. It would just be that he's losing, and
well, but
I mean that's I suppose that's possible.
there's some people who say somebody very confidently predicted. I forget who it was in all the things I've read that if he uses nuclear weapons, the Chinese bail out. The Chinese will abandon their alliance with him because it's too embarrassing for them.
I think that's a real possibility. Again, it's
Well, so
it's a last resort kind of
that's
thing. It's a
well, that's something to think about if you're planning a coup and you want to maintain the friendship with the Chinese. Do it
all
now.
these things could happen. I mean, but the other thing is there's all kinds of fairly extreme provocative things he could do that aren't a tactical nuclear weapon, but that could have catastrophic consequences in the sense of turning it into a wider war.
Like blowing up pipelines.
Well, a good example of how weird the shit is getting, man. I don't know. I don't feel like have a clear idea of who did that. Um,
Everybody else seems to, except for Mr. Ann Applebaum. I thought we were at a stage where you and Ann Applebaum were going to have a rapprochement because you and her husband were both suspicious of who did it. Everybody else says it's Russia, but now he's taken he is Radek Sikorski. He's former defense minister of Poland. He's married to Ann Applebaum, very anti-Soviet, very anti-Russian, and he tweeted with the the pipeline gas bubbling up to the surface a picture of that saying "Thank you USA," and then he followed up with four
wait,
or
that's
five.
wait, whoa, 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 whoa. That's Applebaum's husband who did that.
Yes,
Oh, now is he former foreign minister or former
former
defense minister?
defense minister. Former
Well, see,
defense minister.
that's fascinating. I had no idea. I mean, I knew that this Polish foreign defense minister or foreign some minister had tweeted "Thank you USA," which tells you if nothing else that it does, in principle, make straightforward sense for America to do it. I don't
But
mean that we did, but in terms of game theory logic, we are among the people who would not be unhappy about this in theory. So anyway, that's fascinating. But hasn't he walked that back?
he hasn't. I don't know if he's walked it back. He's deleted the tweets.
Well, that's kind of
I
like a walk back.
I would think
I
that's
mean,
why. And it's commonly one common interpretation that a lot of people have given it is that they were sort of sardonic trolling. He wasn't really serious. He was just pointing out that mocking the Russians by saying you shot yourself in the foot because I think this is something the Americans would do. Uh, so I have the faintest idea. I don't know the guy, but
huh.
he was cited by Tucker Carlson as a reason to
Hmm.
suspect the United States, and now it's considered it was just a troll. I've been
Huh.
very bad at detecting trolls lately. I took it seriously, but
Well, who'd
apparently
have
not.
guessed that a guy who married Ann Applebaum has bad judgment?
Uh,
Anyway, this shows bad judgment, Mickey. I gotta say. Even to not, even if he was kidding, and to not anticipate that,
well, how
not
is it?
everyone would consider it a
How
joke.
how is it bad judgment if he wasn't kidding? Since you sort
Well,
of
then he's
think he
blowing
might be.
America's cover. Obviously, they don't want people to know that they did this if they did it.
Well, he's not in. Nobody thinks he's in a position to know. He's not in power anymore. I
Well,
don't think
still,
the the one reason it's obvious. I mean, I don't quite. The arguments for it not being Russia seem credible. Why would they blow up their own pipeline if they ever want to restore gas to uh, to Europe? If Europe releases the sanctions, don't they want the pipeline to exist? On the other end, they could repair it. But it, the one reason it doesn't seem like it's America is it's not something Biden would ever do.
you wouldn't think
He's
so.
he's not that audacious.
You would not think so, and you would not think that the other parties in the West that it would make obvious sense for, and there are some, including Ukraine, apparently including the Baltic states, even assuming any of them have the capacity to do it, and I don't know about that, you wouldn't think they do it without getting a green light from the US. And again, you wouldn't think Biden would green light this. You wouldn't think America would do it. On the other hand, I don't the arguments for Russia doing it are so much less straightforward in theory, right? In game theory terms. It's like, first, like you saw, well, you know, I don't know. I mean, first of all, there's this thing about force majeure. Like Russia wants to have an excuse not to honor the gas contracts if they want to continue to withhold gas from Europe. It's like they're violating international law on this epic fucking scale. They illegally annex 20% of a country today, and they're like worried about getting sued or something. I mean, give me a break. Maybe
I
now,
agree.
maybe
The better argument, and I've seen this from one of our followers, Laurent Verzukas, I don't know how you pronounce his name, and a
I
bunch of other
look.
places,
uh,
which is they were trying to demonstrate to the Poles and the Danes and other countries with pipelines that they can destroy them anytime they want. So
I
it's like
had an
it's like setting up the demonstration bomb of Hiroshima instead of bombing Hiroshima. You're showing them they could do it. Why would you set up the demonstration by destroying your own pipeline? I don't quite know, but
Well, I think the argument there might be, uh, you don't want to be so provocative as to destroy their pipeline. On the other hand, as somebody pointed out, Germany is, I think, a co-investor in this, so it's still like an act of war because Germany owns part of it. But anyway, the I had an extended exchange with him on Twitter. I haven't looked at Twitter in hours. At last check, he had not replied to my pressing him on like what exactly does Russia hope will happen in response to this vague threat that they might blow something up?
what one thing happens is the price of oil goes up, which helps Russia because they sell oil, and hurts Europe, which would then have to pay more for oil, and throw sort of they were losing the oil war in Europe, and this sort of resets it
Well,
and
did
gives
the
them
price of oil go up? I mean, I don't think
yes, yes, it
it
did.
did.
Pretty sure. I
Um,
don't know how long it did, but it did. So
I
so
it's
their whole hope is to bring Europe to its knees, and this is one possible step he might have thought would help.
yeah, it's it does seem more like Russia to do this than it seems like the other countries to do it. I agree. It's just that the logic to me is less straightforward. Also, I don't know, this Biden administration, man, these guys, you know, Sullivan, Blinken, all these people, they get into like melodramatic, spy guy mode and I don't know. You never know. But
Well, that's always there, but it just doesn't seem very. I mean, for Biden himself, does not seem there. There was this one quote that Sikorsky pointed to when Biden said that that this pipeline will not go into effect, and somebody said, "You have how are you going to do that?" And Biden said something like, "Trust me, we can do it."
well,
And
the
that was sort of evocative, but no, he didn't say it explicitly.
uh there's another a related theory I heard from somebody who pointed out to me that German he was in the presence of Germans, I guess, Germans somebody when he said that, and the argument there was maybe America and Germany, conspired because the German political leadership wants its hands to be tied. It doesn't want to have to say to the people, "We're going to abide by sanctions and deprive you of gas," or something, or and it doesn't want to be pressured by them to relieve sanctions pressure on Russia so that Russia will let the gas flow. So it just makes it impossible for the gas to flow through these pipelines. I don't know.
And there's a rally
The
round effect now. Everybody's going to be for sanctions, so because they
Yeah,
think Russia did it.
and And because I never wanna miss a chance to connect Victoria Nuland to a conspiracy, there is also video of her saying that if the Russians invade, the Nord Stream pipeline will, gas won't keep flowing. But this does, if nothing else, drive home how clear, before the war, America, Nuland, Biden, they were saying, "If the war happens, we want this gas to end." Well, now you're telling us it's in Russia's interest? Okay, could be, could be. And not
Uh,
only for it to end, I mean, we know that Russia was willing to end the flow of gas to use as leverage, but then to tie its own hands so that it doesn't have the capacity to restore the gas and thereby use the gas
but
as a
it,
leverage.
it
I don't
it
know.
it can be restored in a matter of months. I think it's
Well,
not like the pipeline is they have to start from
do
scratch.
you want to finance that project after what just happened? I mean, come on.
Um,
I mean, I guess if you're the people who did it, you'd feel you could guarantee that it won't happen again,
appar-
maybe.
apparently, smart people think the entire German industrial model depends on cheap Russian gas,
Mm.
and so this would be a blow to that if the Germans have not resigned themselves to coming up with a different industrial model. Their industrial model is in trouble in
Mm.
from many directions. It also, I believe, depends on cheap imports from China,
I knew we
which
were heading. I could tell by the tone of your voice we were heading into Mickey territory. Also,
no,
isn't there child tax credit kind of a problem?
no, but immigration is.
Exactly. So wait, before
Except
oh, wait.
the immigration issue has elected a pro Ukrainian fascist in Italy. So
I know, congratulations on that. Fascism is on the march. But before we get to that, I just want to where we were was like uh there's just various ways this war can become a wider war, involving Europe broadly and NATO. And I'm not sure people understand the gravity of where we are right now, because now we're talking about, I don't see any way around a very long conflict in which Russia is determined to gain a lot of ground, and the stakes are very high for Putin. And
well,
if that starts not happening, or God forbid, from his point of view, or the rollback continues, he starts getting desperate.
why doesn't it open the way for a potential settlement where he gets the Donbass and they stop the war, or they remain like North Korea and South Korea, facing off against each other, and it's done, and we
I'm
avoided the. I mean,
I'm going
it's
to say
easy,
it's. I'm going to repeat something I said earlier. There are 4 oblasts he just said are Russian territory. Only
right?
2 of them are the Donbass.
Okay,
Okay? This is an expansive conception of, he does not control all his territory yet, and it goes well beyond
right.
the
So
Donbass.
we have a long grinding war where he gets the territory he doesn't control, and that is not
And then what? Ukraine
that.
says, "This is cool with us." Has that been their attitude so far?
No, but they've nothing they can do about it if they're losing militarily, and we won't give them the arms they want to take it back.
Oh, I think we
So they
will
have to
give
eat
them
it.
the arms. I think we will give them the arms, because for Biden, this is a big loss if Russia succeeds in taking all this territory. So,
Do you think
uh,
American people give a shit about the extra 2 provinces he's
do you think
annexed?
it matters what the American people think? I mean,
Yes. I think
maybe
Biden
eventually, but it's gonna be a while.
everything Biden does is political,
Well, that's what I
practically.
just said, and,
Right.
well,
And
okay, so,
it doesn't help him politically.
I mean, I
So it's
think
not a
it's
big
gonna
deal to him.
be a long time before the American people get weary of this whole thing. That's my judgment. There's also probably a lot he can do unilaterally. Uh, but, without Congress, I mean, I assume Congress would be more responsive to a popular revolt, more immediately than he would. But I think it's gonna be a long time before America bails out, and, it's gonna be a fair amount of time before, Ukraine runs out of soldiers. This is gonna go on a
Oh,
long
we don't have to
time,
bail out.
and
We just have to fund it as a grinding stalemate, and at some point, stalemates sort of fizzle. You know,
well,
uh, they have a
I
line
mean,
of
again, I don't think Biden is gonna be as casual as you are. It's he I if Putin acquires all this territory, Biden lost, and it isn't just political, it's the history books. The guy is in his 70s, late 70s. You care about that's half the reason Putin invaded in the first
yeah.
place, probably. You care about the history books.
You know,
And
this is going to be a
so
Mickey comment, but it's a good. Go ahead, finish what you were going to say. Sorry.
many of your comments are Mickey comments, but, I just, so I think we're talking long hard slog. Every week, there's a chance of just something going awry that intensifies the war. I wrote this column after Dugan's daughter was assassinated and said this is just an example of how wild cards show up. The longer war drags on, this could inflame the nationalist base in Russia. And I had no idea what I was talking about, but there was, I think I mentioned this column in the New York Times by a woman who's actually been on my podcast, who wrote a book called "Is Russia Fascist?" I think, and she said the Dugan thing was a big turning point, and it prepared the ground in terms of the nationalist sentiment in Russia for this big Kharkiv loss to become pivotal, and
But but you see
and now
polls
here we
showing
are.
that the mobilization has turned popular sentiment against the war. Now it's not a democracy. Putin doesn't need to have a majority behind him, but it went from like 60-30 to 30-60 in a week or something.
Wait, is that right? 60 against the war?
That's what the poll I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, I will say this is another wild card. Putin is certainly sensitive to popular support. They're now saying, well, the mobilization was never supposed to include anybody but reserves. Anything else was a mistake. We're sorry. I mean, he is worried about this, and I have no idea about that. That's the other thing that could happen is he has no support for further mobilization, or even of actually mobilizing 300,000 people, and so but even that, he's still in kind of a pickle. He still faces an existential threat to his regime, not to Russia, and that's when crazy shit happens.
If he settles for the parts of the Donbass he has, do you think that's an existential threat to him? No.
Yeah, I think it is to his regime, not to him personally. They might not kill him, but yeah, I
It's
don't think
he only
I don't
got
think
two. He only got two of the four provinces, so they get rid of him.
he doesn't even have those two.
Okay,
He doesn't
but
even have Donetsk. He's got almost all of Luhansk.
well, if he takes if he takes what he has now and says, okay, that's it, he
No,
falls.
that's what I'm saying. Annexation makes what would have been conceivable not conceivable.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He's calling it Russian territory. No,
There,
leaders who fail to secure their own territory often run into political trouble, and he just said it's their territory.
but you're implying that you're almost like Ann Applebaum implying there's like a delicate tripwire for when there'll be a coup in Russia, and I'm not sure he's in that much trouble. The
Um, I yield to experts, and a lot of people think that. I mean, I don't know that much about Russian politics, but a lot of people think I mean, look, it would be considered ignominious failure in any event for him to go out and annex these 4 provinces and make no more progress, or even to get rolled back, which is what's happening in some parts of it now. Now,
um, some people
uh,
drew a distinction between the Donbass and Crimea, which I didn't quite understand.
oh,
That the
totally.
what's the distinction?
Well, for one thing, Crimea was not even within the Soviet Union part of the Ukrainian Republic until the 1950s when Khrushchev
Right.
transferred it. not coincidentally, he was Ukrainian. Um,
So Crimea is even more sacrosanct to Russia than the Donbass.
uh, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah,
Okay, okay,
and there is more clearly support among the people, or was. I think that referendum, they may have inflated the numbers, but I think an honest vote would have gone in favor of joining Russia in the case of Crimea. With these, I would say the numbers are surely inflated, but we just honestly don't know how much support there is. And there may be non-trivial support for what, in fact, the outcomes of the referendum was, because a lot of the pro-Ukrainian people have fled. Russia comes in, invades the place. Naturally, the people who most hate Russia, most
right.
like Ukraine, leave. And so that's one of many reasons it's not a legitimate referendum in the first place. But it may be that there is considerable support in some of these places for joining Russia. We just don't know. Now, I can't believe there's 97% support, or whatever the numbers were. Final quick thing on the mobilization thing. I've heard from a couple of people now, something I hadn't heard before, that they're going to use a lot of these quickly mobilized troops to replace seasoned, well trained Russian soldiers in other parts of Russia, like in the Far East. Okay. And they're going to go to Ukraine.
Huh.
A. Uh,
That makes more sense.
B. It does. And it's more alarming from Ukraine's point of view. Um, B. I guess I would say I now see it seems the most likely ways for this to end, barring catastrophe or regional expansion of the war, are either uh, Ukraine prevails on the battlefield. They at least hold the line, maybe push the Russians back. Eventually, there is a palace coup, and it's fairly graceful. And the new regime uses Putin's departure as an excuse to settle for a deal he couldn't afford to settle for. There's
Hmm.
there's that possibility, and then the other possibility is Russia does secure all four of these oblasts, and by then Ukraine is so depleted of soldiers and perhaps having more trouble getting weapons that Russia starts menacing other areas, maybe takes Odessa, who knows? Um, and Ukraine says no mas, no mas. I think those are the two scenarios. I think it's going to be a while before either happens.
Either one is fine with us, right? I mean,
No, I mean these are bad. I mean,
they're
first
bad
of all,
outcomes, but they're better than all the other outcomes. That's my point.
well, both are worse than if we had negotiated seriously and that had succeeded. I
Right.
don't know if it would have succeeded, but one
Well,
reason we don't know is we didn't try.
but
And B, yeah,
that's water under the bridge. We're talking about the options that are conceivable now.
well, yeah, those are better than nuclear war. Yes, those are better than nuclear war. But it would be deeply regrettable if Russia winds up with these four
For
provinces, because that is, it's positive reinforcement for illegal
right,
invasion, illegal annexation, and now everybody's talking about what a disaster this was for Putin. As time passes, the Russian history books will say, "Hey, we're a bigger country now," and Putin's the
right,
reason.
right. The uh, Ukraine has applied to NATO. Are they going to get in?
You wouldn't think immediately. I mean, I think it's intrinsically a drawn out process. So, but I
Oh,
I, I don't know.
I would have thought that you would be alarmed at the possibility that we would say yes.
Yeah, I hope we don't say yes, uh, but I don't I don't think that's going to happen anytime
Yeah.
soon.
Um, I have my Mickey point, but you are we nearing our time limit?
We got a few minutes.
Okay. Well, you were worried about Biden making the connection between his war against autocracy at home against the MAGA Republicans and his war against autocracy around the globe, and he would declare like the unified purpose of his administration is war on autocracy. Uh, well, there's a third leg of that now because his big one of his two big problems in the midterms is immigration along with crime, and he's realizing it's hurting him. And the new party line is the immigrants are fleeing autocracy. So letting them in is part of our grand battle against autocracy.
You
They're
know what?
all they're all refugees from Venezuela and Cuba. And what, you like autocracy? If you don't like autocracy, we have to let them in. And bizarrely, Rupert Murdoch's Fox is sort of echoing
Yeah.
this.
How about an alternative narrative? They are fleeing the effect of American sanctions. Why is life so miserable in Venezuela? Why is life so
Well,
miserable in Cuba?
the left will adopt that too. I mean, they'll any weapon to hand. But the party line that they think will affect voters is not our sanctions are driving them, because
Yeah.
we don't have sanctions against Mexico and all sorts of other countries that are sending
But I do think
hundreds
they are
of thousands of
I mean,
refugees.
it does so happen that the autocracies are the sanctioned countries, so you can always match their narrative about autocracy
Right,
with
right, right.
an
Well,
a sanctions
they'll do
narrative. I
both,
think
but the voters are not going to respond to the one and not the
well,
other.
Biden won't do both. Biden
Okay,
won't do both.
okay, okay,
He could relieve the sanctions.
right.
He's
But
pro-sanction.
But my point is that he is there is now another brick cemented into the grand battle against autocracy wall,
Yeah.
and it's going to be harder and harder for for uh, Biden to tell John Meacham, that speech didn't work. Let's try something else. I'm really for Social Security. That's the
Well,
focus of my
also,
my presidency.
the Italy election furthers the narrative, right? I mean, it gives them
Well,
another or
if
authoritarian, perceived to be authoritarian-leaning country
if
to
you
worry about.
if you read Chris Caldwell's piece on Maloney in Compact magazine, which is the best thing I've read, not that I've read a whole lot, there's not a whole lot to be scared of with this person. She's she ran in an election and won. Okay, that's not an inherently fascist thing to do. She's been very pragmatic. She has coalition partners. She doesn't have a history of doing he has she hasn't doesn't even have a history of telling kids with masks to take off their masks. She doesn't have that much autocracy as far as uh this profile
And
goes.
she's
she's
pro-Ukraine,
she's
apparently.
pro Ukraine and pro American. And Chris Caldwell thinks
Yeah,
it's a terrible contradiction for her to be pro American and anti wokeness, because America is the source of wokeness.
yeah,
But that's not that's easily finessed. You say we're pro American and we're anti wokeness. Uh, he is also upset that she's pro Ukraine, and that might get her into trouble because her coalition partners are not pro Ukraine. But
yeah,
but and she's a fantastic. I mean, she's a fantastic politician in the sense, like Reagan, she doesn't seem harsh and thuggish or authoritarian. In addition to being an amazing orator, she seems totally genuine. She doesn't seem, when
Do
Reagan,
you do you
when
speak
Reagan,
Italian?
no, but they're translated. The speeches before Google
Yeah,
takes them down, they're translated.
yeah,
Uh, the uh, when Reagan took power, I remember I went to Charlie Peters and say, shouldn't we be worried about him starting a war and doing things? And Charlie said, well, but his self image is he's the nice guy, so that's gonna constrain him. He wants to be
yeah.
seen as the nice guy. She has similar problems. She's the mom who, wants the state to reinforce her values and her identity, but she doesn't. Her identity isn't, I'm a thug and I'm going to make the trains run on
Yeah.
time.
I didn't know that much about her. I was kidding about the fascism is on the march part. We talked about this last week. But
She is renounced. She is more or less renounced
yeah.
fascism.
You know what would have driven you crazy? I was listening to oh, wait, our alarm. Okay, so we had vowed it's actually 49 minutes, though, so we have a minute.
So tell me
We
what's going to drive me crazy.
It won't, if you don't listen to this podcast, but I'll tell you about it and drive you crazy anyway. It's just there's this, kind of Essence of Blob, podcast hosted by David Rothkopf, and, anyway, they were talking about the Italian thing, and so, the first guest, they're, and Rothkopf's alarmed. I'm sure if I looked into it, I'd find some grounds for alarm. I just don't know much about it. But anyway, and so then the first person to comment, Corey Shockey from AEI, says something like, I just wonder all of these, Hungary, Italy, Sweden, these kinds of parties. Is there some kind of malaise about? I mean, I haven't looked into it, some kind of malaise about democracy or something like that. The idea being that because they're worried that this has anti-democratic implications ultimately, she's thinking it's like a protest vote against democracy. And I knew that wouldn't be your explanation, right?
No, that's
And then
crazy. It's all about immigration with all these
right, but it it,
all
it
these
gets worse.
parties.
Okay, but exactly, it gets worse. And then David Rothkopf says, yeah, but there's one thing that a number of these countries have in common. And I thought we were going to hear the word immigration. And he says, Russia supports. So it's like the scenario. And look, Russia, meaning Russia supports these political movements within them.
But
And it's
if
true.
they support Maloney, they're not getting their money's worth because she's anti-Russian.
Well, that's the exception. I think that's why he said most. But anyway, the point is, I think it's true that Russia probably does by and large support these kinds of things and may have done things to help them. But at the same time, it's just a little reminiscent of, oh, the reason Hillary lost was, because
Right,
of
very
Putin, instead
reminiscent.
of looking at the actual
I mean,
issues.
they're if you're an Italian, your immigration situation seems much more existential than it does for us. They're staring at 1 billion people in Africa who may be displaced by various, you know, uh, you know, crop failures, economic distress. They have a very it's one continent where the birth rate has not fallen as much, so there's a huge surplus of people. There are 1 billion people that could move north. Okay, that's not what we're facing at the moment, and so it's a huge issue.
I
Even if
anticipated this being your feeling, and that's why I said this would have
it's
driven
a
you
huge issue
crazy
that even Bill Gates is worried about.
for them to be divided between the possibility it's malaise about democracy and it's the Russians, rigging elections or something.
Well, that I
Not that
mean, the alternative view is that it's the anti-democrats in the EU and Brussels who are stopping the people from controlling immigration, despite vote after vote saying we don't want any more immigration. The EU is determined to cram it down their throat. So
I just want you to answer one
you could say
question.
it's a support for democracy against the anti-democratic forces in Brussels.
We got to go in a minute. I want you to answer one question first. Am I or am I not good at sensing things that would drive you crazy?
That didn't drive me crazy. It just made me think this guy
You
Shockey
got
is
pretty
a little.
animated. You got pretty animated
I was
about their failure to focus on the actual cause of all this, which I anticipated.
I was just making a point.
By
I
your
might.
standards, that's animated.
I'm happy to be animated.
I saw motion. I saw motion
I
on your
only.
side of the camera.
I don't have much coffee left, so I have to be animated.
So we vowed, because these things have been going so long, and because we are really, let's face it, such old and tired men, that since we are since we move on from here to this epic marathon of nonstop mirth and insight known as the Parrot Room, which you can get to via patreon.com/parrot room, and we want to conserve some energy for that. We decided I would set the alarm for 50 minutes, which I did. It rang. And now we say whatever we're gonna say about what we might say in the parent room. I'm not sure I have any, I may just freelance at this time. I don't know if I have specific, things for the parent room.
Okay. Well, uh, I'm allowed four things. I have four things. The
Mhm.
Republicans unveiled their contract with America,
Mm,
or their version of the contract with America called the Commitment to America. I have
mm.
some uh,
Didn't you
slightly,
promise to do that last week?
and I didn't.
Yeah,
So
so you're
I
gonna do
have
it,
some
okay.
critical things to say
Let's see.
about it. And Bob, I'm going to unveil the contract with Mickey. Mickey's contract
Oh,
with America. If you just wanted to please Mickey,
okay,
what would you do? Okay, so that has ten points to that. We had
okay.
a list of the people you wouldn't want to meet in heaven, the people you really didn't like who set you off, Bob, and you left one out. I'm going to supply the missing name.
Well,
Uh,
you're the one who listed them, right?
right, but
Okay.
I listed six of them, and I was 6 for 6. and now I'm going to go 7 for 7. So, uh,
Uh,
there I was.
well, no fair adding in Applebaum. Oh, no, wait, was she on it
I think she
already?
was already there.
Okay.
Uh, there. I was. There was some point I want to clarify this argument we had about AI. Everybody seems to agree I was wrong, yet
Yeah.
you at the end conceded that I was right. So what's going on? And there are sort of interesting things to explore, like if what if you programmed AI to want sex, but they can't have sex? Would they replicate human the human sex drive, or is that impossible to replicate in the abstract? And what would two AIs having sex with each other look like anyway? God,
Um,
maybe they can have sex. That's very scary.
all of these are important questions, and we will get
Okay.
to the bottom of them. I
And
did wanna
and
pick up on the AI thing because there were some comments in the Parrot room that are, I think, conducive, to further illumination.
right. Right. I have I don't know what I'm talking about. I just want to be informed. Um and the fourth thing is I was falsely accused, but even my friends like little Mickey K, I was falsely accused of confusing Bumble and Rumble, or Rumble and Bumble.
Well, let's talk about
As if
Rumble.
I was an aging geezer who like made mistakes like that.
Yeah, let's talk about Rumble, because, it's a happening thing. It's working. The business model is working, unlike, for example, Truth Social's business model. So Rumble is the YouTube alternative for people who want no threat of censorship, basically.
Is
Uh,
it working? Their viewership is exploding, although from a low base, presumably, right?
well, I think the guy who started it, got real rich or something. I mean, I don't know,
Right, but
did they have an
it's like
IPO or something?
they
Mm.
they were sold to a SPAC, a special
Oh,
purpose
the SPAC,
acquisition
yeah, that's
company,
right.
and so the guys are rich, but they're rich on paper. It all depends when can they cash in on their riches. There's a lock-in period. So Dan Bongino, who is apparently one of the people at Rumble,
Well,
is
we can
now
talk about
worth
this in the Parrot room.
untold riches, but we can't be too jealous of him
Okay,
until he can sell his
okay,
shares.
but I think the idea behind this 50-minute alarm thing is that after that, we talk about what we
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
talk about in the Parrot and
Okay.
not
Well.
actually do the
Okay.
talking we would do in the Parrot room. That's just my
Sorry.
interpretation. I'm
I'm
just one
sorry,
guy.
sir. It won't happen again, sir.
Uh, it's kind of authority I have. Maybe say a little bit about the Wagner Group. Oh, Serial Podcast. You heard about him. Mickey, are you mad at
Who?
me? Is that why you're not talking?
Serial podcast?
Yeah,
What, they
remember
let
the
out the
famous
murderer?
podcast Serial? Yeah. Well,
They let the guy out.
you called him a murderer?
Some people are
That's what we'll talk about.
skeptical.
Is he the murderer? Is he the murderer?
I have no
Um,
idea. I just know some people are skeptical.
okay. So was there anything else you were gonna talk about?
I've
Commitment to
I've listed
American Mickey's.
I've listed my four. You're just the one. You're coming
Okay, I
up
do wanna
woefully
talk
short.
AI, Rumble, Wagner Group. Uh,
The seventh person you don't want to meet in heaven. There are all sorts of other substantive things. The
well,
Electoral
let's
Count
talk
Act
about
is.
you let's talk about the people you don't wanna meet in heaven. That's what we'll do. People Mickey doesn't wanna meet in
There's
heaven.
nobody I
Okay.
don't want to meet in heaven.
I will challenge this claim.
Even
So,
okay.
exactly, that's what I mean. There's a name on the tip of your tongue, right?
Yes.
Well, whose name is that?
I'm saving it for the parrot room, Bob. I'm not supposed to talk about these things. Jesus.
I see my counseling has had impact, as always.
It's the painful anal bees you've inserted that are like every time I threaten to say something I should say in the parrot room, I'm like jolted.
Yeah, let's talk about
It's
the anal
like
beads.
that chess guy.
Yeah, the chess guy who we think
There
cheated via anal beads. Can't they? Oh wait, that's a parrot room question about anal beads. Don't always save the good anal beads question for the parrot room. Do the bad ones in public. Okay, patreon.com/parrot room. And if I can find the button to click, uh, your suffering will
Wait,
soon
wait, wait,
be
wait, wait, wait,
over.
wait, wait,
Oh
wait.
wait. Oh, we're gonna hear from the parrot. Okay.
What would the parrot look like if he was Subject to painful anal beads. What would the parrot look
I gotta
like if he
stall while
was
Mickey fixes the parrot's
subject
battery.
to painful anal beads?
It's even better than that in the parrot room itself, folks.